Hey guys, Captain America the First Avenger. Can't believe we're already almost through phase one. Do you know how weird that makes me feel? Because now I know that there's only about eight, nine more movies to get through before Thor Ragnarok, which is crazy to think of because all I have left of phase one is the Avengers. Then I'm on to phase two, and there are only six movies there. And then I have Civil War, Doctor Strange, Guardians, and then Spider Man Homecoming that I'm doing like updated thoughts videos for. So, yeah, it's getting really close. Anyways, let's talk about one of my personal favorites. I would probably rank this as my second favorite movie of phase one. So, there's that. Captain America the First Avenger. Captain America the First Avenger tells the story of Steve Rogers. He's this guy, he's a nice guy, he's a good guy, and he wants to fight. It's World War II, Nazis. He wants to be able to fight. He wants to do the right thing, but he's really skinny. He's got a lot of health issues. He can't. And then he gets picked by this doctor to participate in a super soldier program and see if he is the right guy to give this super soldier serum to. And obviously, since the movie is called Captain America and Chris Evans, who plays Steve Rogers, is on the front of the poster, you know he becomes Captain America. He gets big and muscular. And yeah, this is a really, really entertaining movie. This is one of the more fun and just more all around entertaining Marvel movies, especially of phase one, because again, Iron Man is probably my favorite phase one movie. But then The Incredible Hulk, not. I don't always really feel like watching it. And sometimes I kind of forget about it. Iron Man 2, I just kind of. Generally, I don't always feel like watching it whenever I go through an MCU marathon. Thor is a definite watch, and then Captain America is a definite watch. So, really, the first characters' films are the more strong ones of this phase. Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, the Avengers, those are the strongest ones, and then the Hulk one and the Iron Man sequel aren't nearly as strong, but still pretty good. Yeah. So let's talk about the cast. You have Chris Evans, who plays Steve Rogers. He is amazing. Now, tomorrow, I'm actually going to be talking about another superhero movie that starred Chris Evans in it, Fantastic Four. And, well, personally, I think he's one of the best parts of Fantastic Four. I think he's a lot better as Captain America than he ever was as the Human Torch. But yeah, they use digital effects. They took this little skinny dude and they had him stand in as Steve Rogers for all these scenes when he's just little skinny Steve, and then they took Chris Evans' head and they pasted it onto this little skinny dude. And sometimes there are very few moments in this movie where it doesn't look just incredible. Like, for the majority of the time that he spends as Skinny Steve, it looks so good. The only problem I have with it is the fact that you have Chris Evans' face, on muscular Chris Evans' body in real life, and then you've got muscular Chris Evans' face on skinny dude body, and it just, there's some about it that at times doesn't look quite right, but for the most part, it just looks amazing. And this is my favorite Captain America movie. Now, yeah, Winter Soldier is great. Civil War is amazing. I like this one overall though, just because I'm a huge fan of World War II and I love the period piece setting of this movie. And that is one of the biggest draws of this movie is just the 1940s period piece setting. Like the first maybe 20 minutes when it's just focusing on Skinny Steve and not Captain America, you definitely get the feel of this 1940s world that they're living in. And that is one of the most interesting parts of this movie. I would pay to see a movie all about just skinny little Steve Rogers in 1942 with Bucky Barnes. I would pay to see that movie. I would buy the Blu-ray. I would buy the Steelbook. No, I wouldn't. I don't like Steelbooks. I would buy it though and watch it quite a few times probably. It'd probably be a pretty good like buddy comedy too. That'd be actually not a bad idea. Marvel, if you're listening, get on that. But yeah, and then you get like the army training scenes with him. That's all fine and good. Tommy Lee Jones is there. It's funny. And then he becomes Captain America, and then the movie takes another kind of detour with him being this big propaganda piece that the government is using to sell bonds. And it's not until quite well into the movie that he actually finally starts fighting Hydra and the Nazis. So I guess if you want to count that as an issue, you can. I personally don't think it's that big of an issue just because I enjoy seeing the 1940s set pieces when he's skinny. I enjoy the military training montage because you get to really get a sense of Steve Rogers' character. And then I really enjoyed the scenes with him just on stage doing the little dance in the tights. Just because I think that's a great way to show that even though he's finally gotten what he wants, he's still not quite where he wants to be. And that, I think, is just what makes Captain America such a great character. And that is something this movie does, I think, personally, a little bit better than both Iron Man and Thor, is that you really, really get to feel this character and who he is. And you, by the end, you're rooting for him even more because of who he is and where he comes from, where he's gotten to, and everything that he did to get there. Whereas with Iron Man, yeah, he ended up in the cave and all that, but he never really... His character had a big change, and that worked for that movie. It's just that you didn't really like the character at first, just because, of course, he's supposed to be a douchebag. You're not supposed to like him at the beginning. So that's what that movie does well. Same thing with Thor. You're not supposed to like him at the beginning because he's a douchebag. And you're supposed to grow with the character throughout the movie and when he becomes more likable. And that works for those movies, but I personally like a movie where I can have a main character that I am rooting for the entire movie. Not just after he becomes a superhero and starts to change, or loses his hammer and begins to change. But yeah, then you have the supporting cast is great. You have Stanley Tucci as Dr. Abram Erskine, who gives Steve the super soldier serum. And I love Stanley Tucci. Stanley Tucci is one of my favorite actors. I didn't even know he was in this movie. that is how well he plays this part, is that I couldn't even recognize that it was Stanley Tucci at first. Then you have Haley Atwell as Agent Carter, who goes on to have her own TV show, which I have not watched, and I don't really ever plan on watching, just because I don't really have that much of an interest in it. I haven't really heard whether or not it's all that good. Hang on. But then you have Tommy Lee Jones as Colonel Chester Phillips, who he's basically more or less the comic relief of the movie. He's the grumpy old general who is just grumpy about everything and doesn't like anyone. You know, that old cliche. But it works here, and it's done really well. And he has some of the funniest moments in the movie. Like near the end, when Captain America is chasing the hydroplane to get the Red Skull, and then Agent Carter gives him a kiss, and then Tommy Lee Jones is just like, I'm not gonna kiss you. I thought that was a really funny part. And then we have Hugo Weaving as the Red Skull. One of the best Marvel villains, I think, because just like Captain America, how with Captain America you grow to really just care about him and, you know, root for him immediately. It's the same thing with Red Skull, only the opposite. You grow to hate and just, I wouldn't say fear, but just root against him immediately from the very beginning of the movie. And that's one of the best things you can do with a villain, is accurately, or just portray well enough how evil a character is that the audience hates him from the get-go. I wouldn't say it's as good, but it's a similar thing to Hans Landa in Inglourious Bastards, where from the very first scene with him, you know, it's unsettling, and you get that sense of fear and suspense. I mean, obviously, there's not really that much fear or suspense with Red Skull, but it's similar to where from the very first scene that the character is introduced in, you are rooting so much against the character. And I really like Red Skull. Hope he pops up again later in another movie. I would say this movie is one of the more fun and interesting Marvel movies. It's a great close to the solo films of Phase 1. And I do have one major issue. Now again, this movie is not very packed full of action. So, when we get some action finally, it's in the form of a short montage of Captain America and the Howling Commandos breaking into Hydra bases. And then that's about it until, like, the final battle of the movie. And, yeah, I didn't really appreciate that as much as I'm sure they were hoping for. It was still cool. I just wish there was a little more action dispersed throughout the movie. But, yeah. This movie isn't my favorite Marvel movie, but it is definitely up there with my favorites. And I'm going to give this movie an A. Thank you guys for watching this video. Let me know in the comments what you think of Captain America: First Avenger, and I will talk to you in the next video. Bye.